It must come now.
Live to Downing Street, where you can probably hear the voice of our political editor, Adam Boulton, as John Major goes out into the Rose Garden. We can hear from him now.
Good afternoon. Let me just make a brief statement to you. I've been deeply involved in politics since I was 16. I see public service as a duty, and if you can serve, I believe you have an obligation to do so. I've now been Prime Minister for nearly 5 years. In that time, we've achieved a great deal, but for the last 3 years, I've been opposed by a small minority in our party. During those 3 years, there have been repeated threats of a leadership election. In each year, they turned out to be phony threats. Now the same thing again is happening in 1995. I believe it's in no one's interest that this continues right through until November. It undermines the government and it damages the Conservative Party. I am not prepared to see the party I care for laid out on the rack like this for any longer. To remove this uncertainty, I have this afternoon tendered my resignation as leader of the Conservative Party to Sir Marcus Fox, the chairman of the 1922 committee, and requested him to set the machinery in motion for the election of a successor. I have confirmed to Sir Marcus that I shall be a candidate in that election. If I win, I shall continue as Prime Minister and lead the party into and through the next general election. Should I be defeated, which I do not expect, I shall resign as Prime Minister and offer my successor my full support. The Conservative Party must make its choice. Every leader is leader only with the support of his party. That is true of me as well. That is why I'm no longer prepared to tolerate the present situation. In short, it is time to put up or shut up. I have nothing more to say this afternoon. Thank you very much.
So there we have it, the Prime Minister saying put up or shut up. There will now be an immediate leadership contest. He has resigned as leader of the Conservative Party, as we were suggesting here on Sky News was indeed going to be the content of this announcement this afternoon. Sir Marcus Fox, the chairman of the 1922, has received the resignation as party leader of John Major. Of course, he remains Prime Minister pending the election leadership contest. And I've just seen him going inside there with Dr. Brian Mawhinney and also with Ian Lang, who clearly, I imagine, are now going to be campaign managers in the Major campaign.
Well, Adam, speculation was rife, and our sources here at Sky News have been proved to be correct. So what happens now? How long will it be before this leadership contest takes place?
Well, we'll be hearing from Sir Marcus Fox this afternoon. I imagine there'll be a period now for nominations. Clearly, everyone will be seeking out senior cabinet ministers to get their pledge of loyalty, or indeed their pledge of standing against John Major. I imagine there will probably be the first round probably in something like a fortnight today in terms of voting, and if a second round is then necessary, that would probably be a week later, something like that.
Okay, Adam, if you'll just stay there for one moment. I think we have an immediate reaction from one of the Tory ministers, and Frank is going to be talking to him.
Well, Lord Tebbit, I think we can cross to. Just waiting for some information. Lord Tebbit?
Hello.
Hello, down in our Westminster studio. Surprising news, I think you will concede. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm not altogether surprised. I think John Major has learned from Margaret Thatcher's experience. He's not going to wait for Heseltine to come for him, as she did. He's going to get out there and force the issue now, and I'm pretty confident that he will have a resounding victory.
It's been described by our political editor as the suicide option, if indeed it goes wrong, because it could backfire, couldn't it?
Well, it could do, but I'm pretty confident that it won't, because you see, the position now is that the cabinet, all the members of the cabinet are locked in. I don't think any of them are going to break ranks and stand against John Major. So it could only be a stalking horse candidate. And I think that John Major has probably taken the best tactical opportunity that he can to force the issue, get it over, and I think with a clear win behind him, nobody's going to challenge him in November.
But it's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, for the Conservatives and for lovers of the Conservative Party, such as yourself, that possibly only a year away from the next election, the party is on the rack once again in this way.
Well, it's more likely 2 years away from the election. It may well be, of course, that the Prime Minister will show another streak of characteristic bravery. And having sorted out his question of his leadership of the Conservative Party, might take an early opportunity to go farther than that and make sure that he gets the re-endorsement of the British people.
Do you think the Cabinet were solidly behind him? There was some speculation that because the news conference was called for 4:30 but only took place at 5 o'clock, that he was on the telephone during that time having last-minute discussions with waverers.
I don't know. It's more likely that someone was making sure that the rules provided properly for all this. May have been that he wanted to reach colleagues on the telephone to inform them, because after all it would be very odd if a member of the Cabinet somewhere out of London was to hear about this decision first from the radio or television. And the Prime Minister's an extraordinarily courteous man, and he looks after those personal relationships very carefully, and he would want to tell all his colleagues in the Cabinet of his decision before they heard of it through the media.
Does it surprise you at all that no members of the Cabinet would be willing to take the plunge? Michael Heseltine, Michael Portillo are two names that spring obviously to mind.
I wouldn't expect a challenge from the Cabinet. I think that would be rather surprising, because I think we all realise that that would be more likely to split the party in a more serious way than ever before. For my part, I rather welcome it. I'd like to see the Prime Minister securely back there with an overwhelming majority, or perhaps no one willing to challenge him at all, because I think then it makes it easier, actually, for those of us who have policy differences to express our views on policy without this eternal accusation that there's some personal animosity towards John Major.
Sir Marcus Fox, chairman of the 1922 committee, began the day by suggesting that a radical cabinet reshuffle was what was in order. Is it possible that that might occur as well as a leadership election?
I wouldn't be surprised. I know that at least one key member of the cabinet has cancelled engagements for tomorrow.
Can you name him or her?
I think I'd probably better let him do that. And that would suggest either that he's having a move, or alternatively that he is going to be the campaign manager for the Prime Minister's campaign in the leadership election.
Our sources are suggesting that Brian Mawhinney could be taking over in the longer term, not only as campaign manager, but also as party chairman from Jeremy Hanley.
Well, I guess that if so, it would be a very popular move, because Mawhinney's a very tough, straight-talking guy, with an excellent sense of humour as well, a very, very good record as a minister, a very competent chap, and I would think that the whole party would have very great confidence in him.
Lord Tebbit, thank you very much for reacting so quickly to the Prime Minister's announcement. Thank you.
Not at all. Thanks.
If you've just joined us here on Sky News, there have been dramatic developments over the last few minutes. And here is John Major's statement again. He made just a short time ago when he stood down as leader.
Let me just make a brief statement to you. I've been deeply involved in politics since I was 16. I see public service as a duty, and if you can serve, I believe you have an obligation to do so. I've now been Prime Minister for nearly 5 years. In that time, we've achieved a great deal, but for the last 3 years, I've been opposed by a small minority in our party. During those 3 years, there have been repeated threats of a leadership election. In each year, they turned out to be phony threats. Now the same thing again is happening in 1995. I believe it's in no one's interest that this continues right through until November. It undermines the government and it damages the Conservative Party. I am not prepared to see the party I care for laid out on the rack like this for any longer. To remove this uncertainty, I have this afternoon tendered my resignation as leader of the Conservative Party to Sir Marcus Fox, the chairman of the 1922 committee, and requested him to set the machinery in motion for the election of a successor. I have confirmed to Sir Marcus that I shall be a candidate in that election. If I win, I shall continue as Prime Minister and lead the party into and through the next general election. Should I be defeated, which I do not expect, I shall resign as Prime Minister and offer my successor my full support. The Conservative Party must make its choice. Every leader is leader only with the support of his party. That is true of me as well. That is why I'm no longer prepared to tolerate the present situation. In short, it is time to put up or shut up. I have nothing more to say this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Well, that was John Major's dramatic announcement just 10 minutes ago. Since then, we've heard from Lord Tebbit speculation about a campaign manager, possibly a small cabinet reshuffle to start with Dr. Brian Mawhinney taking over as party chairman from Jeremy Hanley. Let's get more reaction now from our Westminster studio, because there is the Conservative MP Andrew Hunter, who's chairman of the Northern Ireland Backbench Committee. Good evening, Mr. Hunter.
Good evening.
When we originally arranged to talk to you, we were going to ask you primarily about Patrick Mayhew's letter in the Times today, suggesting that the party rally round John Major for fear of scuppering the Northern Ireland peace deal. We'll come to that in a moment, but first of all, as a John Major loyalist, what are your feelings this afternoon?
Well, it's a bombshell, a great surprise. I certainly was not anticipating this, but I think perhaps we shouldn't have been all that surprised, because the Prime Minister, above all things, is a great political fighter. We've known that, we've seen it over the years. What he has done is to take a very bold, very courageous step. It's one that I personally shall be supporting loudly, because I think we have got to put behind us this squabbling and this challenging of leadership to his leadership, which undermines the authority of the government in so many important respects.
But will it put an end to the squabbling? Won't we perhaps find ourselves, if the Tories are still well behind in the polls this time next year, that there'll be more suggestions of a leadership challenge?
Oh, my goodness, let's not look that far ahead. The immediate point is that for the last X weeks and months, there has been virtual non-stop rumour, gossip about challenges. The Prime Minister's taken the initiative. He is setting the agenda. And I and many others will admire him greatly for this.
And yet, some of his best friends seem to be his worst enemies. Sir Marcus Fox of the 1922 committee saying that what was needed was nothing short of a radical cabinet reshuffle. That's what he said today. It's almost as if his hand has been forced by those closest to him.
Well, I personally was not aware that Marcus had said that. There's been a lot of wild talk, and I don't necessarily include Marcus's statement in that. I think there's been too much confusion, too much taking the eye off the ball. What we need to do is to get all this behind us, and I think the Prime Minister is precipitating that very courageously indeed.
It could go badly wrong, of course. A stalking horse challenger from the backbenches, say Norman Lamont, could pick up 80 or 90 votes, which would be a major embarrassment to the Prime Minister, and might force him to take matters in hand and resign after the first round.
Well, yes, that sort of scenario is always a possibility, and there are other possibilities as well. We'll have to wait to see what happens. My own guess is that very many backbenchers, an overwhelming majority of backbenchers, will be rallying behind the Prime Minister, and he will have a very comfortable victory indeed.
Now, what about the Patrick Mayhew letter to the Times this morning? Will the peace accord or the negotiations towards peace in Northern Ireland really be upset if John Major is forced to leave office?
Well, yes, I'm on record today for saying that, and I repeat it now. I think that if the Prime Minister, John Major's authority were to be diminished, or if he were to cease to be Prime Minister, then there would be a very serious threat indeed to the continuation of the search for ultimate peace in Northern Ireland.
Are you saying that he's crucial to the peace negotiations? Surely his successor, whoever it might be, is equally keen to bring peace to Northern Ireland.
Yes, but no Prime Minister this century has made such a high priority of resolving the long-term problems of Northern Ireland. John Major invested enormous political capital into this. He has set his reputation on it, in a manner of speaking. I don't imagine that any other Prime Minister would do the same to that same extent.
Andrew Hunter, thanks very much for joining us. I should add that the Agriculture Minister, William Waldegrave, has said that this is a characteristically courageous move by John Major, and he has my total support, says Mr Waldegrave. So that is one Cabinet Minister immediately throwing his hat into the ring in support of the Prime Minister. Anna.
We'll be hearing from other politicians throughout the programme, and do stay with us here on Live at 5, because we hope to be speaking to the Prime Minister himself about his reasons for standing down, choosing to stand down today and call a leadership contest, and that will be later this hour here on Live at 5. Now, moving on to other news, agriculture ministers in Europe agreed a deal today to limit the journey times for the export of live animals. It'll mean a maximum basic time of 8 hours, with higher limits for better equipped trucks. Britain's Agriculture Minister William Waldegrave said the deal means cowboy operators now have something to fear. But some animal rights groups say the limits still aren't good enough. The main news of the day, which was broadcast to you live here on Sky News just under 20 minutes ago, that the Prime Minister has dramatically quit as the leader of the Conservative Party and challenged his critics to take him on in a fight for the keys of number 10. Now, as the leadership contest hots up over the next couple of weeks, let's discuss what the implications are with David Shaw, who's a senior Tory backbencher, and he joins us in our studio in Westminster. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Now, why do you think he's chosen to go now to Sir Marcus Fox and resign as leader?
Well, I think it's a clear position. He's established a clear position. He's shown himself to be a man of some courage. He's taken a very sensible course of action insofar as he stays on as Prime Minister. That's why he hasn't gone to the Queen, but he's actually gone to Sir Marcus Fox and resigned as leader of the Conservative Party, thereby provoking the challenge process. And we now obviously have to see if anybody will actually come forward.
Do you think it was just coincidence then that it was only this morning that Sir Marcus Fox came out publicly and called for a cabinet reshuffle?
Well, I think there is a position whereby many people in the party feel that regardless of the outcome of this process, there does need to be a radical move forward, a radical change to the way in which we've been conducting our affairs. And that requires a lot of authority in the Prime Minister. And this is, of course, one of the ways of getting that authority.
Has he taken the party completely by surprise with this?
Well, I think undoubtedly he has. I think anybody in the party who says they saw this coming is not being wholly truthful. The fact of the matter is this is a very clever situation, thought out very carefully by a very courageous person who is prepared to put everything on the line and shows that he really does want to continue as Prime Minister, quite clearly.
Now, the other candidates are going to be throwing their hats into the ring over the next few days. Who do you see as being the front runners to...
Well, we don't know for certain that there will be any other candidates. There has been some talk in the past about candidates. There are one or two names that have been suggested as possible people, but when one confronts them in the tea room, they tend to smile and say, "Not me, Gov." So I think we are going to face ourselves with a very interesting situation over the next few days as we see if any declarations are actually made.
And no doubt a couple of weeks of frantic campaigning behind the scenes, trying to get people to lend their support to the candidates, if indeed there are going to be any who choose to stand against John Major. So inevitably the contest will be in 2 weeks, and the campaigning will start from now.
Well, assuming again, as you and I are suggesting here, if there are actual candidates who are going to oppose him. We will obviously have to see whether that comes about, whether there are going to be any early announcements, whether there are going to be announcements right at the end of the first period. The first period is however long that nominations are going to be open for. And until that first period actually closes, we won't really know the position unless people come out with early announcements.
David Shaw, thanks very much for joining us
Thank you.
swiftly on Sky News. Thanks.
OK, now some news just coming in. It's coming in from all directions at the moment. Opposition MPs have called for a suspension of Commons sitting while Prime Minister's situation is unclear. And also, we have details of John Major's campaign team. It's Viscount Cranbourne, who's leader of the House of Lords. He's to manage the Prime Minister's campaign, and he's going to have the support of the Scottish Secretary, Mr Lang, and Dr Brian Mawhinney, who is also being touted as a possible new chairman of the Conservative Party. And in answer to the opposition's call for suspension of the Commons, the Deputy Speaker has refused to suspend a sitting, saying there was a constitutional distinction to be drawn between the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. So the Commons continues to sit. We also have information coming into the Press Association that nominations for the challenge to the Prime Minister will close a week today, and the election will take place the following Tuesday. That would be Tuesday, July the 3rd. That's unconfirmed. That's according to the Press Association's sources within the Cabinet. Let's go to our political editor, Adam Boulton, back down at the Prime Minister's Rose Garden. An awful lot to take in, Adam. It was interesting talking to Andrew Hunter there that he was taken entirely by surprise, but on reflection, didn't have much time to reflect, but he thought that it was the right decision.
Yes, the Prime Minister said put up or shut up. I think clearly, as we were saying beforehand, the level of crisis within the Tory party is such that he felt that he had to confront this one head on. I think this is a very brave political decision taken by John Major to put his job on the line. I have to say my expectation is that there will be a backbench challenger of some sort, because I think otherwise all those people who criticised John Major would simply look foolish, and therefore I think this has been a calculated decision, but certainly not one without risk.
Well, there's very little new to ask you, as we've been speaking to you for most of the afternoon, but name names, if you will, from the backbench. You mentioned Norman Lamont last time. What about Nicholas Budgeon?
Well, I think Nicholas Budgeon is a possibility. We've had John Carlyle, who said that if no one else does it, he'll do it, which is one of the reasons why I think there'll be a challenge. And indeed, we've also heard from people like Tony Marlow in the past. So I think there's no shortage of people who would register a protest. And it has to be said, at this stage, we can't rule out the possibility of someone resigning from the Cabinet to stand against the Prime Minister. It's noticeable. Here he comes now, actually. We'll be talking to him. I was just saying it is noticeable that we haven't had heard that there are going to be oaths of loyalty from everyone yet. And his management team of Brian Mawhinney, Viscount Cranbourne and Ian Lang are fairly senior, but they're certainly not the top figures in the Cabinet. They're not the Chancellor, they're not the Foreign Secretary, so we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, the Prime Minister's coming now to have a quick word with us.
Shall we
well, I'll reposition, then we'll go straight ahead, I think.
OK, so let's stay with it as Adam prepares to speak to the Prime Minister.
Here he comes. With us in just Prime Minister will be with us in just a moment, and there you are, you see behind him other reporters coming in now, but I think we'll have the first word now, if he's just coming.
All right, well, while we're waiting, Adam, I can say that the President of the Board of Trade, Michael Heseltine, has expressed his complete support for John Major. So there's one oath of loyalty from the Cabinet. Another one we had earlier from William Waldegrave, the Environment Minister, and Douglas Hurd, the Foreign Secretary, about whose future there was speculation earlier today, saying that he will support John Major as well. So ringing support coming in from senior Cabinet colleagues. And at this stage, we're waiting for full Cabinet approval, but the top people at the moment definitely supporting John Major. No word of any possible resignations. While Adam sets up to speak to the Prime Minister, I think we can return to the Rose Garden now. Adam.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We are live, so let's not say anything off the record. That be honest. I have to ask you, first of all, you speak with some bitterness, really, about what's been going on within your own party.
No, I'm not speaking with any bitterness at all. What I'm concerned about is the fact that these constant rumours for so long, rumours often in the back room, often behind a closed hand, dominating media interests for a very long time, are distracting from the real agenda. There's a great deal happening at the moment, a great deal we're doing, a great many successes this country has. Now, all of that is getting drowned out in the cacophony of noise in terms of this speculation. I think it's time for this speculation to be put to rest.
Michael Heseltine has confirmed he won't be standing against you. Have you obtained oaths of loyalty from the rest of the Cabinet?
I haven't gone round the Cabinet asking for oaths of loyalty. I don't need to. I have no doubt that no one in the Cabinet will not stand against me. I have the support of Cabinet, that is clear. Everyone in Cabinet knows what I'm proposing to do. I do not expect a challenge from Cabinet.
Do you expect a challenge from the backbenchers?
Well, I can't say. Like everyone else, I have heard the rumours that there have been, I've heard the speculation. Well, that speculation is damaging. We had it in 92, nothing happened. We had it in 93, nothing happened. We had it in 94, nothing happened. Now the same noise has begun to appear again in 1995. Well, I'm not prepared to see that go right through the summer, right through August, September, October, right up to November. I think we must solve the matter now.
Do you have any idea of Norman Lamont's intentions?
Not the faintest idea.
Now, this, to a certain extent, is a kamikaze option, isn't it?
In no sense. I've indicated precisely why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because I think it is firstly in the interests of the country, secondly in the interests of good government, and thirdly in the interests of the Conservative Party to ensure that this matter is solved and this idle speculation put to rest for good and all.
The Labour Party have, we understand, called for a suspension of Parliament while this leadership election is going on. Is that something you're going to go for?
What a ludicrous proposition. I mean, I must say they do get sillier day by day. No, of course not. I haven't resigned as Prime Minister. I've resigned as leader of the Conservative Party.
What happens if you win? Will you be sacking a large number of your Cabinet colleagues?
I'm going to have the election. We'll conclude the election. In due course, I will consider other matters.
Can I ask you what your manifesto is? Why should Tory backbenchers vote for you, John Major?
I'm not going to make great changes to what I've been doing. Colleagues know me. I've been there for 5 years. I think I will invite them to look around at perhaps one of the strongest economies in Western Europe. A level of inflation at such a low level, we haven't seen it for a very long time. Unemployment falling more dramatically here over the last 2 years than anywhere else in Europe. Exports growing in a way they haven't done elsewhere. There's a very great deal happening. The education reforms well stabilised and settled down. The health reforms as well. A huge amount happening, but most of it just pushed to one side as though it's of no interest while this idle speculation goes on and on and on and on. Well, I think it's time to turn the speculation off.
I must ask you about one hot point, single currency. Are you prepared to say that you will offer a referendum on that?
My position, I've always said for a long time that I'm not going to rule out a referendum. Neither am I making policy changes today or in the course of this campaign.
And do you think you're the best man to lead the party now?
If I didn't think I was the best man to lead the party, I wouldn't be leading it, and I wouldn't be standing again in the election.
And could you just tell us finally how you reached this decision, when you reached it, and what was the final straw, if you like?
Well, it wasn't a question of a final straw. There wasn't a single event. I've been concerned for some time at the way in which this constant speculation is drummed up. Frankly, whenever a journalist or a show is short of a story, the same old people have been drummed up with the same old ideas and the same old speculation. Heaven alone knows how many programmes some journalists have chaired, poring over this same subject again and again and again. Frankly, it's rather tiresome. More important than it being tiresome, it is just damaging because it damages normal political debate in this country. So I've been thinking about it for some time. I began to reach a conclusion last weekend. I've reflected on it for a few days. I decided finally last night that it was the right thing to do.
And your wife's behind you on this?
Oh, totally, yes.
And are you absolutely confident you're going to win?
Yes, I believe I'm going to win.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
John Major.
And thanks very much indeed to Adam down at number 10 Downing Street in the Rose Garden there, where it was just half an hour ago that the Prime Minister today dramatically quit as the leader of the Conservative Party. In his statement, he said now is the time to put up or shut up. He said, I believe it's in no one's interest that this continues right through to November. It undermines the government and it damages the Conservative Party. We heard him there confirming that he will stand in the leadership contest, that Michael Heseltine has confirmed he will not stand against him. He has the support of Douglas Hurd and of William Waldegrave. Well, we're going to take a short break now, but we will be catching up with all the main news and the sports news in just a moment.
Hello again, you're with Live at 5 on Thursday evening, and a dramatic evening it's been because just over half an hour ago the Prime Minister, John Major, announced that he was standing down as leader of the Conservative Party, challenging his critics to take him on for the fight for the keys of number 10 Downing Street. He called a hastily arranged news conference in the garden at number 10 and told reporters that now is the time to put up or shut up. In the last half hour, 3 senior cabinet members, the Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, the President of the Board of Trade, Michael Heseltine, and the Agriculture Minister William Waldegrave have all said that they will support the Prime Minister. Nominations are expected to close a week from today for possibly somebody from the backbenchers to take up the challenge, possibly a member of the Cabinet to resign in order to challenge the Prime Minister, and it's expected that the election will take place on Tuesday, July the 3rd. Let's go over the dramatic events of this afternoon now, following this report from Richard Bestick.
Major is coming.
With no questions, John Major's message was as short as it was dramatic. It's time, he told the Conservative Party, for those disloyal backbenchers to put up or shut up. He's no longer prepared, he said, to see the Conservative Party on the rack of uncertainty.
The Conservative Party must make its choice. Every leader is leader only with the support of his party. That is true of me as well. That is why I'm no longer prepared to tolerate the present situation. In short, it is time to put up or shut up. I've nothing more to say this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Among Tory MPs, Mr Major's announcement is seen as a stunning surprise.
Well, it's a bombshell, a great surprise. I certainly was not anticipating this. But I think perhaps we shouldn't have been all that surprised, because the Prime Minister, above all things, is a great political fighter. We've known that, we've seen it over the years. What he has done is to take a very bold, very courageous step. It's one that I personally shall be supporting loudly.
Just 20 minutes before, and there was no indication among the Tory leadership that the Prime Minister was to make his announcement. There was still much common speculation on party leadership. Education Secretary Gillian Shepherd making clear her loyalties.
I certainly would not stand against Mr Major. What absolute nonsense.
The day had begun with Cabinet and a plea from Northern Ireland Secretary Sir Patrick Mayhew for an end to Tory backbench sniping at the Prime Minister. It was, he argued, threatening the peace process in the province. Proof, said Labour in Prime Minister's questions later, that Tory divisions are threatening the national interest.
If even Cabinet Ministers decide that the bitter infighting is damaging the national interest, why won't the people of Britain conclude the Conservative Party is no longer fit to govern the country?
Mr Major concentrated on an emotional tribute to Sir Patrick.
My right honourable friend is an honourable friend in every sense of the word. What his letter shows is that few men are blessed with better personal friends than he is to me, and I am immensely grateful for his continued support. What it also shows is that he is deeply concerned for the Northern Ireland peace process, to which he has contributed a very great deal.
That something was afoot was given an added spin by the comings and goings at number 10 of the Tory backbenchers leader, the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Marcus Fox. He now organises the leadership contest. Richard Bestick, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, let's return now to our Westminster studio, and waiting for us there is Bob Worcester, familiar face on Sky News, chairman of Maury, the opinion pollsters. Good evening, Mr Worcester.
Good evening.
What do you make of this, then?
Well, I think it's a very interesting, as was said, a very bold move, and I think it will go down with the public. The public see John Major as not listening to the views of ordinary people, talking down to people, and most of all, indecisive. Not seen as capable. And I think these will be tested in the weeks to come, because what he's done is effectively scuppered all the speculation that would take place between now and November. He has probably put aside a serious challenge in November for a phony challenge now, which I think he'll see off very neatly. The Cabinet will rally behind him. This will look like they're united on something, if not on Europe, and will, I think, be reflected in the polls in the few days to come. There will be opinion polls taken in the next few days.
Right. I mean, you're going to be polling as usual, will you? And perhaps more intensively than usual?
No. It's business as usual. It just happens that we're in the field. We will be in the field on the weekend for the Times for next week, and we will be measuring the impact that this has had. Now, John Major stands today with only 10% of the British public satisfied with his performance as Prime Minister, of his government. 21% are satisfied with John Major's performance as Prime Minister. The Conservative Party share at the moment is only 22%. Now, I thought when they hit 28 on the way down, they were at rock bottom. Then they went to 25. Then further they fell to 22. while the Labour Party is standing at 58. Now, it's a long time from a general election, we have suspected, but I think what this will do will be narrow that gap and bode well for a rejuvenated image for the Prime Minister.
On the other hand, doesn't it make the Conservative Party look weak and divided? Let me just quote the comments of Tony Blair, the Labour leader, a few moments ago. He said that the Prime Minister has now accepted that the Conservative Party is unfit to govern. Won't it look to the country as though for a few days we have a Conservative Party without a leader, and although we still have a Prime Minister, we have a great deal of uncertainty hanging over the political future of Britain?
Yes, but the 3rd of July, I think that will fairly decisively be put behind.
Can I just interrupt, Bob, and say that we've now got confirmation that the closing day for nominations will be June the 29th, and the first ballot will be on Tuesday, July the 4th. That comes from the Central Office.
How very appropriate that you would be interviewing an American about something that's going to take place on the 4th of July. I think on the 4th of July, there will be firecrackers for John Major. The question will be not the people who stand, not the people who vote against him, but how many of these rebels abstain. If there are 40 or 50 that abstain, he is in some trouble. If there are as many as 80, he is in deep, deep trouble. There will be a serious challenge in November, and he will probably fall. So he's really rolling the dice on his career, the career of John Major as Prime Minister, and the future of the Conservative government in this country, and the possibility now for something I've said there was virtually no possibility, an election this year.
Exciting times. Just before you go, Bob, do you care to name or predict who the stalking horse might be?
Well, as of last weekend, I was pretty sure it was going to be Norman Lamont, certainly, if not others as well. I doubt, however, that Norman Lamont will now look for the humiliation that I think would come to any quasi-serious challenger on the 4th day of July.
And in his place, if Norman Lamont doesn't come forward?
Well, there will be do you remember the name Christopher Meyer, Sir Christopher Meyer?
I do.
Yes. There will be, no doubt, some Sir Christopher Myers who will be persuaded on the issue of Europe and Euroscepticism to stand. I don't know if it's going to be Bill Cash. I doubt it. I don't know if it's going to be Nick Budgen. I doubt it. But there are some people who are loyal Tories, however, put the country ahead of the party, and their belief is that the country is threatened, the country's sovereignty is threatened by Brussels.
Right, so you think that whatever happens between now and Friday, there will be a challenge?
I think there probably will be from someone.